The October rain drummed against the windows of my modest ranch home in Akron, Ohio, creating rivulets that distorted the streetlights outside. At 74, I'd grown accustomed to the quiet evenings, the soft tick of the grandfather clock, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional creak of settling wood. But tonight, something felt different the moment I stepped through my front door. "Grandpa Frank?" The voice belonged to Emma, my 26-year-old granddaughter, but it carried an edge I'd never heard before. The house felt wrong, too still, like the air had been sucked out of it. I hung my rain-dampened coat on the familiar hook by the door, the same spot where Margaret used to hang her garden apron after tending to her beloved roses. "Emma? What are you doing here, sweetheart? I thought you were supposed to be at work." Lord, the living room was cast in shadows, heavy curtains drawn against the autumn evening. Emma sat rigid in Margaret's old floral armchair, but this wasn't the bright, ambitious young woman who used to help me repair the back porch steps. Her usually neat brown hair hung in unwashed strands around her pale face, and her clothes, wrinkled jeans and a stained college sweatshirt, looked like she'd been wearing them for days. Dark circles rimmed her bloodshot eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she gripped something in her lap. When she shifted, I caught the glint of metal, my own carving knife from the kitchen drawer. My mouth went dry. "Emma, honey, what's wrong? You're scaring me." She laughed, but it was a hollow sound that made my chest tighten. "Scaring you? That's rich, coming from the man who's been systematically destroying our family's future." I lowered myself carefully onto the worn sofa, my arthritis protesting the movement. The cushions still held Margaret's faint scent of lavender soap, a comfort that now felt mocking. "Emma, I don't understand. What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me, Grandpa." Her voice cracked like ice. "I know about the donations. The church fund, the veterans' charity, the scholarship you set up in Grandma's name. $47,000 in the past 6 months alone." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Those donations had been my way of honoring Margaret's memory, her belief in helping others. "Emma, those were what? Necessary? While your own granddaughter is about to lose everything?" She stood abruptly, the knife catching the dim light from the table lamp. "I got evicted yesterday, Grandpa. Yesterday. I've been sleeping in my car for 2 nights, showering at the gym until they canceled my membership for non-payment. But the room felt like it was closing in on me. This couldn't be happening. Not Emma, not the little girl who used to make me dandelion necklaces and insist they were real gold. "Sweetheart, why didn't you tell me? I would have helped." "Like you helped when Mom died?" Her voice broke completely now, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Like you helped when I begged you for a loan to finish college. You said I needed to learn responsibility, while you signed another check to some charity that doesn't even know your name." The memory stung. 5 years ago, when Sarah, my only daughter and Emma's mother, died in that horrible car accident, I'd been drowning in my own grief. Maybe I had been too harsh, too focused on building character instead of recognizing a young woman's genuine need. "Emma, please put the knife down. We can talk about this." "No more talking." Her scream echoed off the walls and I flinched. "I'm done being the patient, understanding granddaughter while you give away money that should be mine. Do you know how much you're sitting on? $367,000. I checked your statements." My blood went cold. "You went through my personal papers?" "I had to. You won't listen to reason. That money, it's not just yours, Grandpa. It's our family's legacy, Mom's inheritance. My future, and you're pissing it away on strangers." The rain intensified outside, matching the storm building in my chest. Emma's face was flushed with desperation and rage, the knife shaking in her grip. This wasn't the granddaughter I'd raised Sunday dinners for, taught to drive in this very driveway, walked down the aisle at her high school graduation. "Emma, I understand you're upset?" "Upset?" She laughed again, that terrible broken sound. "I'm destroyed, Grandpa. Financially, emotionally, completely destroyed. And you have the power to fix it, but you'd rather play the generous saint with money that belongs to both of us." I tried to stand, but Emma stepped forward, raising the knife slightly. Don't you dare try to leave or call anyone. We're going to sit here and we're going to figure this out. Tonight." The grandfather clock chimed 9 o'clock, its familiar sound now ominous in the charged atmosphere. Outside, the October wind howled through the bare branches of the maple tree Margaret and I had planted on our wedding anniversary 30 years ago. "What do you want from me, Emma?" She wiped her nose with her free hand, leaving a streak across her cheek. "I want you to transfer $50,000 into my account tonight, enough to get back on my feet, pay my debts, start over." "Emma, that's not how—" "That's exactly how it's going to happen." Her voice hardened again. "Because if you don't, if you try to leave or call for help or refuse me again, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of grandfather you really are. The neighbors, the church, the police, they'll all hear about how Frank Morrison abandoned his only granddaughter in her hour of need." The threat hung in the air like smoke. I looked at Emma, really looked at her, and saw not just desperation, but something darker. A calculating coldness that reminded me uncomfortably of her father, the man who'd abandoned Sarah when Emma was just 7 years old. "And if I don't agree to this ultimatum—" Emma's grip tightened on the knife handle. "Then we're going to have a very long night, Grandpa, because I'm not leaving without what's mine." The house creaked around us, 40 years of memories suddenly feeling fragile as paper. Margaret's presence seemed to fill the room, her disapproval, her wisdom, her unwavering belief that family should always support each other. But she'd also taught me that enabling destructive behavior wasn't love. As Emma settled back into the armchair, knife still in hand, I realized this night would change everything between us. The only question was whether we'd both survive it with our souls intact. The rain continued its relentless drumming, and I prepared myself for what might be the longest night of my life. The digital clock on the cable box glowed 11:47 p.m., its red numbers burning into the darkness like accusatory eyes. Emma hadn't moved from Margaret's chair in over 2 hours, the carving knife resting across her knees like a twisted scepter. My bladder ached, my back screamed from sitting in the same position, and my mouth felt like cotton. But every time I shifted, her hand tightened on the weapon. "You're not thinking clearly, sweetheart," I tried again, keeping my voice as gentle as possible. The grandfather clock's methodical ticking seemed to grow louder with each passing minute. "This isn't you. This isn't the Emma I raised." Her laugh was raw, exhausted. "The Emma you raised? You mean the obedient little girl who never asked for anything, who watched you shower everyone else with generosity while she scraped by on minimum wage and ramen noodles? That Emma is gone, Grandpa." Outside, the storm had intensified. Tree branches scraped against the siding with a sound like fingernails on wood. The power flickered once, and Emma's eyes went wide with panic before the light steadied again. "Tell me about the eviction," I said carefully. "What happened to your job?" Her face crumpled slightly. "The restaurant closed. 3 weeks' notice, just like that. 15 months of bartending, gone. The owner said it was the economy, but I think his wife found out about his gambling debts." She wiped her nose with the back of her free hand. "I had exactly $237 in my checking account when they locked me out." The raw pain in her voice cut through my fear. This was still Emma, still my granddaughter, buried beneath layers of desperation and poor choices. "Why didn't you call me then, before it got this bad?" I did call. Her voice cracked like a whip. 3 times. You were too busy with your church committee to take my calls. Mrs. Patterson said you were indisposed with important charity business. The memory hit me like a sledgehammer. 3 weeks ago, I'd been organizing the annual harvest dinner for the homeless shelter, completely absorbed in coordinating volunteers and donations. Helen Patterson, my neighbor who sometimes answered my phone when I was in the garden, had mentioned Emma calling, but she'd said it wasn't urgent. Emma, I never got those messages. Bullshit. The knife trembled in her grip. You got them. You just didn't care enough to call back. Just like you didn't care enough to check on me after the funeral, after I dropped out of grad school, after Dad disappeared again. Each accusation landed like a physical blow. In the months after Margaret's death, I'd been lost in my own grief, barely functional. Maybe I had missed the signs, ignored the cries for help disguised as casual conversation. I should have been there for you, I admitted. After your mother died, I was so wrapped up in my own loss. 5 years, Grandpa. Her voice broke completely. It's been 5 years, and you're still using grief as an excuse for being selfish. Mom wouldn't have wanted this. She wouldn't have wanted you to abandon me for your precious charity cases. The room felt suffocating. Margaret's presence seemed to hover in the shadows, her disappointed gaze weighing on my shoulders. She'd loved Emma fiercely, had worried constantly about her future after Sarah's death. My throat was parched. Emma, I need some water, and I need to use the bathroom, please. She studied me for a long moment, then stood slowly. Fine, but I'm coming with you. And if you try anything, if you so much as look at your phone, I will make you regret it. The walk to the bathroom felt surreal, Emma trailing behind me with the knife held low but visible. The hallway was lined with family photos. Emma's school pictures, her graduation, Sarah's wedding, Margaret and me on countless anniversaries. The smiling faces seemed to mock the current situation. In the bathroom, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My grey hair was disheveled, my face pale and drawn. I looked every one of my 74 years, maybe more. When had I become this frail old man who could be intimidated by his own granddaughter? Back in the living room, Emma allowed me a glass of water, but positioned herself between me and the kitchen phone. The cordless handset sat on the counter like a lifeline I couldn't reach. You know what the worst part is? Emma settled back into the chair, her energy flagging. I used to be proud of you. Proud of how generous you were, how you helped people. But then I realized you only help strangers. People who can thank you publicly, who make you feel good about yourself, your own family. We're supposed to just figure it out on our own. The accusation stung because there was truth in it. The praise I received for my charitable donations did feel good. The recognition at church, the gratitude from organizations. It had filled some of the emptiness Margaret's death had left behind. That's not. I never meant for you to feel abandoned. But I did feel abandoned. Every time you wrote another check to the children's hospital while I ate cereal for dinner. Every time you funded another scholarship while my student loans ate me alive. Every single time you chose strangers over family. The clock chimed midnight, and the sound seemed to ring with finality. We'd crossed into a new day, a new level of crisis. What's your plan here, Emma? Really? You can't hold me hostage forever. Her eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion, but her grip on the knife remained steady. I don't need forever. I just need you to understand that this is it. This is my last chance. If you don't help me now, I have nothing left to lose. The threat hung in the air like a loaded gun. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the house, and I found myself thinking about Margaret's final words in the hospital. Take care of our girl, Frank. Don't let her face the world alone. I'd failed that promise, and now we were all paying the price. $50,000, Emma repeated. That's all I'm asking for. It won't even dent your savings, but it'll save my life." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of every decision that had brought us to this moment. When I opened them again, Emma was watching me with desperate hope and barely contained desperation. "And if I say yes, if I transfer the money, then what?" "Then I disappear. You never have to see me again. You can go back to your charity work and your perfect reputation, and I'll figure out the rest on my own." The words hit me harder than any physical blow could have. The thought of losing Emma completely, of her disappearing into whatever darkness had already consumed so much of her spirit, was unbearable. But the knife in her hands, the wild look in her eyes, the threats, this wasn't a granddaughter asking for help. This was something else entirely. The storm raged outside, and inside, two broken people faced each other across a chasm of hurt and misunderstanding, neither sure how to bridge the gap without destroying everything that remained. The pale grey light of dawn crept through the curtains, casting long shadows across the living room that had become our prison. Neither of us had slept. Emma's eyes were bloodshot and rimmed with dark circles, her hands shaking from exhaustion and whatever substances she'd been using to cope. The knife remained in her grip, though her hold had loosened with fatigue. My entire body ached. My left hip, where I'd had surgery 2 years ago, throbbed with each heartbeat. My throat felt raw from dehydration, and my chest tightened with each breath. At 74, my body wasn't built for this kind of stress. "Emma," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Look at yourself. Look at what this has become." She startled at the sound, jerking upright in the chair. For a moment, confusion clouded her features, as if she'd forgotten where she was. Then reality crashed back, and her grip tightened on the knife handle. "Don't," she warned, though her voice lacked the fire it had carried hours earlier. "Don't try to make me feel guilty. You don't get to play the victim here." Through the thin walls, I could hear my neighbor Bill Henderson starting his pickup truck for his morning commute to the factory. The familiar sound of suburban life continuing normally while my world fell apart felt surreal. "I need my medication," I said quietly. "My heart pills. They're in the kitchen." Emma studied my face, probably noting the greyish pallor I could feel settling over my skin. The irregular rhythm in my chest had started an hour ago, stress-induced arrhythmia that my cardiologist had warned me about. "Fine, but we go together." Standing sent shooting pains through my lower back. Emma remained close behind me as we shuffled to the kitchen, where Margaret's morning sunlight used to stream through the window over the sink. Now it only highlighted the dust motes floating in the stale air. My pill organizer sat next to the coffee maker, filled with Margaret's methodical precision from before her death. Emma watched warily as I dry-swallowed 2 small white tablets, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped them. "When did you start taking those?" she asked, and for a moment I heard genuine concern in her voice. "About 6 months after your grandmother passed. Stress," the doctor said. I leaned against the counter, feeling marginally steadier. "Emma, please, this has to stop. You're going to hurt both of us." Her face hardened again. "I'm not going to hurt anyone if you just do what I asked. Transfer the money, and this all goes away." "And then what? You disappear and I never see you again? That's not solving anything, sweetheart. That's just—" "Don't call me that!" she screamed, raising the knife. "Don't you dare call me sweetheart when you've never treated me like family." The outburst seemed to surprise her as much as it did me. She swayed slightly on her feet, and I realized she was running on empty. No food, no sleep, probably no proper meals in days. "When's the last time you ate something?" The question seemed to deflate her. "I don't know. Yesterday morning, maybe. There was some bread at the shelter." "Shelter?" My heart clenched. "Emma, you've been staying at a homeless shelter?" "Just for meals. I couldn't afford a bed." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you know what it's like, Grandpa? Sitting in that cafeteria, surrounded by people who've lost everything, knowing that your grandfather has more money than he could spend in 2 lifetimes? The image of Emma, my educated, talented granddaughter, standing in line at a soup kitchen, made my chest tighten with shame. How had I not known? How had I been so blind? "Let me make you something to eat," I offered. "Some eggs, toast." "No." But her resolve was cracking. "We're not having a nice family breakfast. We're not pretending this is okay." Outside, I heard Bill's truck returning. He'd forgotten something, probably his lunch. Margaret used to pack mine every morning for 30 years, wrapped in wax paper with a handwritten note. The memory of her careful attention to detail made my eyes burn. Emma noticed my distraction and followed my gaze to the window. "Don't even think about it. Don't think about signaling for help." But her attention had shifted just long enough. In that split second, I saw my chance and took it. My fingers found the panic button on the medical alert device around my neck, the one Margaret had insisted I wear after my heart episode. I pressed it as silently as possible, praying Emma wouldn't notice the small red light that activated. "Grandpa?" Emma's voice carried a new edge of suspicion. "What did you just do?" "Nothing, sweetheart." "Don't lie to me." She stepped forward, her eyes wild. "What did you do?" The panic button was designed to be discreet, but Emma had always been observant. Her gaze locked onto the device around my neck and her face went white with rage. "You called for help. You actually called for help instead of just giving me what I need." "Emma, please." The kitchen phone rang, its shrill sound cutting through the tension. The monitoring service, calling to verify the emergency. Emma's head snapped toward the sound, and I saw pure panic flood her features. "Don't answer it!" she hissed, raising the knife higher. "Don't you dare answer it!" The answering machine clicked on after 4 rings. My own voice, recorded 2 years ago, filled the kitchen. "You've reached Frank and Margaret Morrison. We can't come to the phone right now." Margaret's name in the message seemed to break something in Emma. Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the lost little girl she'd been after Sarah's funeral. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this," she whispered. I just needed." The phone rang again immediately, protocol for the medical alert service. This time Emma moved toward it, knife raised, as if she could intimidate an inanimate object into silence. "Emma, the police will come anyway. The service will send them if I don't respond. You need to put the knife down and let me handle this." "No!" Her voice broke completely. "No! They'll arrest me. They'll lock me up, and then I'll have nothing, less than nothing." In the distance, I could hear sirens, faint but growing closer. Emma heard them too, her head tilting like a frightened animal's. "This is your fault," she said, backing toward the living room. "All of this is your fault. If you had just helped me, if you had just cared about your own family—" "I do care about you," I said, following her slowly. "I love you, Emma. But this isn't the way." "Love?" She laughed bitterly. "You don't know what love is. Love isn't charity donations and tax write-offs. Love isn't conditional on good behavior and financial responsibility." The sirens were getting closer. Emma's breathing became rapid and shallow, her eyes darting between me, the windows, and the front door like a trapped animal looking for escape. "Put the knife down, sweetheart. Let's end this before someone gets hurt." She looked at the weapon in her hand, as if seeing it for the first time, then at me, then toward the approaching sirens. The next few seconds would determine whether this situation ended in tragedy or if there was still hope for both of us to find our way back from this dark place. The storm outside had passed, but the one in my living room was just reaching its climax. The Cuyahoga County Courthouse rose before me like a monument to justice, its limestone facade weathered by decades of Ohio winters, but still imposing in the pale March sunlight. 4 months had passed since that terrible night, and the intervening weeks had been a blur of police interviews, legal consultations, and sleepless nights replaying every moment of Emma's breakdown. I adjusted my tie with fingers that still trembled slightly, not from fear now, but from the medications that kept my heart rhythm steady. The events of that October night had taken their toll. 2 nights in the hospital, a mild cardiac event brought on by stress, and a harsh awakening to truths I'd been too proud or too blind to see. "Mr. Morrison," Detective Sarah Walsh approached from across the courthouse steps, her professional demeanor softened by genuine concern. Over the past months, she'd become something of an advocate, helping me understand the legal process while showing remarkable patience with an old man's questions. "How are you feeling about today?" I glanced toward the courthouse doors, knowing Emma was somewhere inside, probably in a holding cell or conference room with her court-appointed attorney. "Ready for it to be over, Detective, one way or another." The arrest hadn't been violent. Thank God for that small mercy. When the police arrived that dawn in October, Emma had simply collapsed, the knife clattering to the hardwood floor as she dissolved into heartbroken sobs. No resistance, no threats, just the complete breakdown of a young woman who'd reached the end of her rope and made horrible choices in her desperation. "The prosecutor thinks we have a strong case," Detective Walsh said as we climbed the steps. "Armed kidnapping, extortion, elder abuse, even with her financial troubles as mitigation, she's looking at serious time." My stomach churned at the words. Elder abuse. When had I become someone who could be victimized by his own granddaughter? When had Emma become someone capable of such desperation? "Detective, I need to ask you something. Is it too late to—" "Mr. Morrison." She stopped walking, her hand gentle but firm on my arm. "I know what you're thinking and I understand it, but what she did to you was a felony. Multiple felonies. You can't just forgive this away." The courthouse lobby was bustling with morning activity. Lawyers in expensive suits, families clustered on benches, the occasional defendant in handcuffs being escorted by bailiffs. The smell of industrial cleaner and old wood polish filled my nostrils, mixing with the nervous energy of people whose lives hung in the balance. District Attorney Michael Chen met us by the elevators, his expression professional but kind. We'd spoken several times over the past months, and he'd been patient with my questions about the process, my concerns about Emma's future. "Mr. Morrison, are you ready for this? I know seeing her again might be difficult." The elevator climbed to the 3rd floor with mechanical precision. Through the narrow windows, I could see the Cleveland skyline, the lake beyond it grey and choppy in the March wind. Margaret would have loved this view. She'd always found courthouses fascinating, symbols of human attempts at fairness in an unfair world. "Before we go in," I said, stopping in the hallway outside the courtroom, "I need you to know something. I want to change my statement." Detective Walsh and DA Chen exchanged glances. "Mr. Morrison, we've discussed this. You can't change the facts of what happened." "I'm not changing facts. I'm adding context." I pulled out a folded piece of paper from my jacket pocket, something I'd been working on for weeks with the help of a therapist Dr. Patricia Williams had recommended. "I want the court to understand what led to that night, my part in it." Through the courtroom's frosted glass doors, I could see figures moving inside. Emma was in there, facing the consequences of her actions, but also carrying the weight of abandonment and neglect that I'd contributed to. "Mr. Morrison," D.A. Chen said carefully, "anything you say that could be construed as accepting blame for her actions could complicate the case." "Maybe it should complicate it." I met his gaze steadily. Maybe justice isn't just about punishment. Maybe it's about understanding what went wrong and how to fix it. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, paneled in dark wood with fluorescent lighting that cast everything in harsh relief. Emma sat at the defendant's table beside a young public defender, her head down, hands folded. She'd lost weight during her months in county lockup, her face gaunt, her brown hair pulled back severely. She looked fragile, breakable, nothing like the desperate woman who'd held me hostage. When she saw me walk in, her composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks and she mouthed, "I'm sorry," repeatedly until her attorney placed a restraining hand on her arm. Judge Robert Martinez called the court to order, his voice carrying the authority of decades on the bench. "This is the matter of People versus Emma Sarah Morrison, case number CR 2024-1847. Councillors, are we ready to proceed?" The proceedings began with clinical precision. The charges were read: kidnapping, extortion, elder abuse, criminal threatening. Each word hit like a hammer blow, reducing that terrible night to legal terminology that somehow made it both more and less real. Dechen presented the case methodically. Security camera footage from my neighbor's house showed Emma arriving at my home on the day in question and not leaving for nearly 12 hours. Medical records documented my cardiac event following the incident. The knife, entered as evidence, looked pathetically ordinary under the courtroom's harsh lights. "The defendant held her own grandfather hostage for over 10 hours, Chen told the jury, his voice measured but firm. She threatened him with a weapon, prevented him from leaving, and demanded money under threat of violence. This is not a family dispute. This is a serious felony that endangered an elderly man's life." When it came time for victim impact statements, I stood on unsteady legs and approached the podium. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper I'd prepared, and I had to clear my throat twice before I could speak. "Your Honor, members of the jury," I began, my voice carrying further in the quiet courtroom than I'd expected. "I'm Frank Morrison, Emma's grandfather, and the victim in this case. But I want you to understand something about victimhood." I could feel Emma's eyes on me, could hear her quiet crying from across the room. What Emma did that night was wrong. She scared me, she threatened me, and she made choices that could have ended in tragedy. But I failed her first. I failed her when she needed me most, when she was drowning in debt and desperation, and I was too busy playing the generous benefactor to strangers to notice my own granddaughter was crying for help. Dechen shifted uncomfortably at the prosecution table. This wasn't the statement we'd rehearsed. I'm not excusing her actions. What she did was criminal, and actions have consequences. But I am saying that I bear responsibility too. For the abandonment she felt, for the desperation that drove her to such desperate measures. A family should be a safety net, and I let mine fall apart. I looked directly at Emma, whose face was streaked with tears. "I love you, sweetheart. I've loved you since the day you were born. But I lost sight of what love means, not just providing for you, but being present for you, listening to you, prioritizing you over my own need to feel generous and important." Judge Martinez leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Morrison, what are you asking the court to consider?" "I'm asking for mercy, Your Honor, not because what Emma did was acceptable, but because justice should be about healing, not just punishment. She needs help, addiction counseling, financial management training, therapy to deal with the trauma of losing her mother and feeling abandoned by her family. Prison won't give her those things." The courtroom was silent, except for the quiet hum of the ventilation system and Emma's muffled sobs. "I'm also asking for the chance to make this right, to be the grandfather I should have been all along, to help Emma rebuild her life, but to do it properly this time, with boundaries, with accountability, with love that doesn't enable, but empowers." I folded my statement and returned to my seat, feeling both drained and oddly relieved. I'd said what needed to be said, regardless of the legal consequences. Emma's attorney, a earnest young woman named Rebecca Foster, presented the defense case with obvious compassion for her client. She painted a picture of a young woman devastated by loss, failed by systems, driven to desperation by circumstances beyond her control. Emma Morrison is not a hardened criminal, Foster argued. She's a lost young woman who made terrible choices in a moment of complete desperation. The night in question represents the lowest point in a downward spiral that began with her mother's death and her grandfather's emotional abandonment. When Emma took the stand in her own defense, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I never meant to hurt him," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I love my grandfather more than anyone in the world. But I was so angry, so desperate, so tired of feeling invisible and worthless. I thought if I could just make him see how much pain I was in, if I could make him understand." "Do you take responsibility for your actions that night?" her attorney asked. Emma looked directly at me for the first time since the proceedings began. "Yes. What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed the person who raised me, who taught me right from wrong. I scared him and hurt him, and I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, their faces were solemn but not unsympathetic. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts," the foreman announced, "but we recommend mercy in sentencing given the mitigating circumstances." Judge Martinez scheduled sentencing for the following week, allowing time for pre-sentence reports and character assessments. As the court adjourned, Emma turned toward me, her face a mask of hope and terror. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," she mouthed. "I'm so sorry." 1 week later, I sat in the same courtroom as Judge Martinez delivered Emma's sentence. 2 years in state prison, suspended to 6 months county jail with credit for time served, followed by 3 years supervised probation. The conditions included mandatory counseling, financial management classes, and restitution for my medical expenses. But more importantly to me, the judge ordered family counseling as part of her probation requirements. "Miss Morrison," Judge Martinez said, looking directly at Emma, "you will spend the next 3 years proving that you deserve the mercy this court is showing you. You will attend every counseling session, complete every program requirement, and demonstrate through your actions that you understand the gravity of what you did and are committed to making better choices." 6 months later, I sat in Dr. Patricia Williams' office with Emma for our weekly family counseling session. The room was comfortable, filled with soft lighting and the kind of furniture that invited honesty rather than demanded it. Emma looked healthier than she had in years. The county jail's structure and forced sobriety had helped her gain weight, and her eyes held a clarity I'd almost forgotten. She'd completed her GED while incarcerated and was making plans to return to college through a program for formerly incarcerated students. "Frank, Doctor," Williams said, "you've talked about changing your approach to helping Emma. Can you elaborate on what that looks like practically?" I looked at my granddaughter, sitting across from me in a simple blue dress she'd bought with money from her part-time job at a local non-profit, her first honest paycheck in months. "I'm learning that love isn't just about providing money when someone's in crisis," I said slowly. "It's about being present consistently, about listening without trying to fix everything, about supporting someone's growth rather than their dependence." Emma and I had established new patterns over the past months. Weekly dinners where we actually talked instead of just exchanged pleasantries. Honest conversations about Margaret's death, Sarah's accident, the years of grief and miscommunication that had led us to that terrible night. I'd also restructured my charitable giving, creating a formal family foundation that Emma would eventually help manage. She was learning financial responsibility, not through punishment or withholding, but through education and gradual involvement in meaningful work. Emma, Dr. Williams continued, how are you processing the anger that drove your actions last October? Emma was quiet for a moment, her hands folded in her lap. I'm learning that anger was just the surface emotion. Underneath it was grief for my mom, for the relationship I thought I should have had with Grandpa,